The Outlast 2 demo was released recently, and it is so good! Filled with all manner of horrible things to really sink our teeth into. It's an excellent example of atmosphere, environmental storytelling, and just straight up pants-wetting spooky times. In this video, we'll spend the first half going in deep, looking at exactly how the Outlast 2 demo works its magic, and in a second, I'm going to go heavy on the conjecture, seeing what we can draw from what this has given us and what it means for the final game. If you're already familiar with the demo and want to skip straight to the juicy theories, just click the link on the right. Otherwise, let's dive in. The demo starts working you from the moment you open the game. From the brightness settings themselves, from square one it tells you to look into the dark corners, to search for the awful things hidden there. A subtle bit of player training that gets you in the mood and the mindset before you've even begun. And then we start the game. We get the premise. Investigative journalists looking into the impossible murder of a pregnant woman in the middle of nowhere. We meet the characters and we get a few more details.
Tell me when we're good.
Okay, we're good.
2 weeks ago, a young woman was found wandering, barefoot, pregnant and alone, on a barren stretch of highway 100 miles from the nearest...
Keep these things in mind, they will be important. And then, things get started.
Oh, the fuck? Did you see that?
We lost the engine. Fuck. Fuck. Jesus Christ! Oh, no, Julian, I found you! Going down.
Interestingly, the cross isn't the only thing that's inverted in this shot. If you look carefully, the fire itself appears to be burning backwards. The difference becomes clear when you play in reverse. Keep this in mind too.
Lynn!
You get literally thrown into the game, and in so doing, it establishes a new game mechanic. Our good friend Blake needs glasses to see. And it also makes a promise. At some point, and it's not going to tell you when, it's going to take those glasses away from you. The moonlit valley you land in is craggy, dark. It only points one way, and only gets worse. Blake's motivation is immediately clear.
Lynn! Lynn! Lynn!
His wife, Lynn, is missing. A simple goal, which is both relatable and pulls him deeper into the town and gives him a reason not to simply scurry back up the ravine. But you don't get very far before you start to get the feeling that this place is wrong somehow. Now, you're not going to get much help from the friendly locals, but what really sells the atmosphere here isn't the moonlight or the desolation or even the buckets full of rotting guts. It's the ability to peek in through the window curtains. This actually does so much to put you into the shoes of the character. The game's thrown you in and told you, okay, you're a journalist. But to really connect you with the character, it needs to encourage you to use the camera, which it does with the zoom and the night vision capability, but also to poke into all those dark corners, to lean into the shadows when any sane man would run the crap away. It started to set us up in the brightness screen, and now it does it again by leaving a little gap in the curtains for you to see if there really isn't someone in this cottage who can help you. So, the game has made us vulnerable, it's made us inquisitive, and now, as we approach the town, it makes us paranoid. The sound design is fantastic here, with scampering footsteps from your flanks, but nothing appearing there. Something knows you're here. You can poke into one of the houses to find a dead body just chilling, and this. Besides being a nice little spook, this is actually really important to the plot. I'll get to why later, but for now just, keep it in mind. You hear voices from the sides, and notice that, oh, you're not alone. People are staring at you. But when you spot them, they back away. However, the way they move is strange, always watching you, and they seem to almost be moving in reverse? The town is filled with religious imagery, from crosses littering the paths to this painting of a man that I will affectionately dub Papa Joe Stool. In classic horror style, it takes this familiar imagery and makes it unfamiliar, giving it a different context that both unsettles you and provides some hints as to what's going on in this town. There are equal parts here to disquiet you and disgust you. And what's important is that your character reacts to them too. He'll gasp, he'll breathe heavily, he'll gag when standing around rotting cow corpses. He expresses his emotions, and those emotions often line up with what we, as the players, are feeling. This helps to connect us to our avatar in the game, and immerses us in the world and in the story. This is critical, especially for a horror game, where the more removed the player is from the experience, the harder it is to actually scare them. By bringing the character closer to ourselves, it reduces the gap between the game and the player. It gives us stakes, and in so doing it's able to scare us directly, rather than just using our character as a punching bag. Pushing further in, we see an oddly humanizing element. Photos of children stuck on the fence with their toys left for them, like a small shrine or a memorial wall. It suggests that these are lost children, and moreover that the people who live in this town care about them. For as much as they may be, creepy machete-wielding, backwards-walking, cow-slaughtering weirdos, they love their children. These two things begin to demonstrate a degree of caring and compassion, things that we wouldn't really expect to find in an Outlast game. Furthermore, it tells us that the situation is far more complex than we might think. These people may be hostile to us, yes, and they may do terrible things, sure, but they're still people. They're not the crazed psychopaths of Mount Massive. They're not monsters. And that's where the real horror lies. The idea that they could be us. They still think, they still feel, they still love, and yet they're being driven to do awful things. And perhaps if we were in their situation, we would do the same things. Another curious item that you spot are these religious texts, with scripture written in French and Latin, but not in English. This is also something that I'll return to later because it is pretty important. But for now, we're going to move on and see that several arches are engraved with the words Satanas, inimical Dei. And while I'm pretty sure that my pronunciation is terrible, this is Latin for Satan, enemy of God. We see it again, engraved most prominently over the entrance to a house, with a nice spooky crow for added effect. The arches are placed all along the path, almost like warning signs. And then above the portal again, most clearly, saying, no, seriously, there's Satan going on here, alright? But, of course, being the protagonist in a horror game, we jump right in and see some kind of messed up nativity scene, blending the themes of Christianity and children, and then just dumping a big old bucket of blood over the top of it. Speaking of which, there's a blood trail leading out of the room, and I wonder where that leads to. Oh dear! Yeah, that's a lot of dead children, arranged in a cross shape. And they make lovely squishing noises when you step on them, just for that, extra little kick. Ugh. Not only does this room go out of its way to be disturbing, but it also tells us in no uncertain terms, hey, children and Christianity, both important to the plot, and both connected within the plot. So keep it in mind. As we make our hasty retreat from this room, we find an odd little well, surrounded by discarded children's toys. The air seems to blow away from the well, like it's constantly exhaling. and we hear a girl's voice, and it seems to be coming inside the well, so I guess we better check it out, and oh no! In one swift licky-tongue move, we are dumped straight into the supernatural. Not only are licky-tongue wells not common in Arizona, but you got dumped in a vent? And if you turn around, you see that there is actually no way you could have gotten here. It's not like the well ended in a vent. We are certainly in a different place now.
Please, Blake. Don't let this happen.
We hear the girl's voice again. But now she's talking directly to us, whispering as though it is someone else that might hear her. Oh, and there totally is. Great. So it turns out we've been dropped into a Catholic school. A Catholic school just before exams. I wonder if the game is trying to tell us that we're going to be tested. The classroom serves as an oasis for an mounting tension. It's well lit, it's quiet, and there's nothing for us to be anxious about except for the giant piles of test papers and the understaffed upcoming concert. I mean, really guys, 3 people on stage and one of them has a triangle? Come on, we can do better than that. The other item of interest is the encyclopedia CD on the teacher's desk, dated at 1995. This means one of 3 things. The school is very poorly funded, the teacher's never heard of the internet, or we've gone back in time. Which, much like having come here at all, is conventionally impossible. Anyway, you can only stay in this lovely safe classroom for so long, and this pitch black corridor looks really inviting, so off we go. And you're back in a nightmare. Now this is probably my favorite part of the demo. It does so much to mess with you and create an environment that is just awful to be in. It's totally dark, people are off hiding and running in the next room, and just being in a school at night is inherently unsettling. A locker opens up for you, and inside is a clue as to both where you are and why you're here. This locker belongs to someone called Jessica, a friend of his wife Lynn. And while that raises a good number of questions, it also introduces 2 new things. A character named Jessica, and suggests that Blake was once involved in a love triangle. Both interesting details, but not immediately important. Especially since now, this happens. The hall goes full poltergeist on us, and every time we turn around, there's this shadow that just flits out of our view, like it's always just behind us, toying with us. You can try to run back to the classroom, but that's not really an option anymore. After you get attacked, the thing lets you go, and a portal of light appears through that locker. You pop out on the other side and see, again, there's no way what you just did could have happened. Nice. Also, looking out the window, we get a full confirmation that wherever we are, it is most certainly not where we just were. As if you needed any more confirmation that something strange was going on. But what's this? A scream? We must investigate. You turn the corner and see a body hanging from the roof at the end of the hall. Apparently Jessica's body. But if you turn around, you can actually see an exit sign over in the darkness. Just down the hall through a couple of locked doors. So tantalizingly close. And yet so woefully unattainable. Hope is dangled just out of reach. But you have no choice but to delve deeper into the nightmare. You walk towards Jessica, but, well, our good friend Licky Tongue gets to her first. We see her trying to claw her way back out before she's dragged back in, which tells us that despite the whole hanging thing, she's still alive, but in all sorts of trouble. And, more likely than not, she's going to come up again later. The only place to go is the music room. We figure you can find a triangle and maybe join the band, and that way— oh dear!
I'll bleed you in the yard!
Back in the real world, in someone's house, and he's not happy to see us there. He tells you that he's gonna hunt you and bleed you, and while it does take him a good while to make his way down the stairs, I'm inclined to believe him. You run out into a cornfield, and shortly realize it's not just one guy who's after you. The whole town has come out to play. Ducking through the cornfield and dodging teams of flashlight-wielding murderers is straight up awesome horror material. Trying to navigate a cornfield with zero visibility, except for the beams of light from your murderous pursuers, trying to hide, trying to stay away from them and find a way out is tense, tricky, and terrifying. When you do hop a fence and get out, realize you've just gone from the frying pan and into the fire right into the center of their power with nowhere to hide. You rush through the town, trying to stay ahead of your pursuers and get the crap away, but what really makes this part work is how well it's set up and how well it guides you. Rewinding a little, the cornfield section was a golden bit of player training that is immediately exploited. The game teaches you this one simple rule: stay away from the lights. And that part lasts long enough on average that the rule is pretty well drilled into you by the time you make it out. So to guide you through the pulse-pounding dash through the town, without you getting lost or looking around or breaking the pace, all it has to do is shine around a couple of flashlights, and then the player does all the legwork. Well, so to speak. You rush on through, and then you take a tumble and you drop your glasses again, you ninny. Luckily, someone's come to help us back on our feet. What a lovely lady they are. Oh, but hey, they pushed us over. Ooh, right in the bridge angles. Now let's just take a closer look at part of that. The weapon she's using is a mining pick, which is pretty unconventional, but a sensor has been attached to it, suggesting that this is a religious icon, though a makeshift one. She's dressed in plain, somewhat ragged clothes and a hood, which combined with the tool she's holding suggests that she's some sort of religious ascetic rather than your run-of-the-mill pick-wielding junk chopper. Combined with all the other Christian imagery and the people yelling verse at you in the street, this really drives in what the deal is with this place. They're religious to the point of crazed and dangerous fanaticism. But why are they this way? What drove them to become so violent, so xenophobic, to slaughter their own children, when they clearly still care about them? Before I answer these questions and start going heavy on the conjecture and conspiracy theories, there's one more thing that the game has included which is instrumental to building its atmosphere. Your loyal companion, the video camera. The camera has a lot more character to it this time around. From the first time you turn on the night vision, the vision slowly spreads out like it's waking up with bleary eyes. And when the battery runs low, the night vision fades low before snapping back, as though it's nodding off to sleep. But the most interesting addition is right here. Audio indicators. The camera is also listening. It's also watching. It's helping you work out which direction all the spooky noises are coming from, and when the sound spikes, it goes red like it's panicked itself. These small touches raise the camera from simply being a game mechanic to being a companion with you on this wonderful journey of awful, giving you a small measure of hope. After all, as bad as things may get, at least you still have your faithful camera. You know, until you don't. So now that we've seen how the Outlast demo does its thing, let's talk about what it all means. The biggest point that they're trying to hammer here is that the town is full of religious zealots and they're out to get your ghoulies. But what makes these people more dangerous than your average religious zealot? They clearly still care about each other, and they even work together to catch you. They're not just raving loonies. Something is driving them to violence, to these monstrous acts. As for what that thing is, we need look no further than this. Satan, enemy of God. Now, in order to explain my theories, let's take you on a little journey. Imagine for a moment that there was a small, isolated mining community somewhere in Arizona. There was a man there, a leader in the community, a man named Joe Stool. But being the leader isn't enough for him. He wants more power, more control over his peers. And so he uses religion. He distributes Bibles among them, brings them the Word of God, but only gives them Bibles that they cannot read. Being unable to read the Bible themselves, they rely on Joe Stool to interpret the Word of God. And in so doing, Joe Stool is free to interpret the Bible any way he wants. He ceases to be Joe Stool the leader, and becomes Papa Joe Stool, the prophet. Imagine he convinces his people that the devil is among them, and uses that fear to control them. He tells them that they are not safe, that their children are possessed by the devil, that they must be purged, or Satan will walk the earth once more. The people become accustomed to violence, and with every atrocity that is asked of them, Papa Joe Stool gains more power over them as he is lauded as a saint and a savior. Now, imagine he was right. What if there is a terrible evil lurking under this town? What if, in their mining, they uncovered something they shouldn't have? And what if everything the townsfolk have done, and have been forced to do, has been to fight that evil, to keep it contained? And what if you, by accident, let it out? Outlast 2 is not about you running from pitchfork-wielding mobs, though it may include that. It is about a war between two monsters, a terrible lurking power, and what the town has had to become to contain it. And you get thrown into the middle of that mess, hunted and potentially used as a pawn by both sides. The demo starts with a helicopter crash, but from what we can see in the demo, this town would not have anything that could bring down a helicopter. And moreover, they would probably prefer to let one fly by rather than destroy it, and potentially bring attention to themselves. But the force beneath the town has its own agenda. It wants new blood. It wants to rattle its bars and break from its cage, and it can't do that alone, so it brings down your helicopter. The burning cross, inverted both in direction and in time, suggests that this force has some power over time, and it uses that power to clear the way for you to reach it. The villagers are trying to stop you from getting past, stop you from getting to this point, but the dark force makes them powerless to stop you. And once you've reached it, it takes you. It brings you inside your own mind, into your memories. It surrounds you, and then it strikes. But it doesn't kill you. It lets you go. Now, why would that be? Unless it no longer had a reason to keep you there. It seeks to escape its cage, or to spread out past its borders. And now it has you. Someone who can pass from the real world to that place. What if when it attacked, it implanted itself or part of itself in you? What if it let you go only so it could break its bonds? or so you could spread it to the world? Consider why Blake and Lynn are even here.
2 weeks ago, a young woman was found wandering, barefoot, pregnant, and alone on a barren stretch of highway 100 miles from the nearest.
She ran from this town because she knew what would happen to her child if she stayed, meaning that the child was compromised or possessed before it had even been born. That it was, in essence, the child of the devil. So it's not just that the dark force is able to possess the young, it's that it's able to spread itself through impregnation, to have claimed or tainted the children before they are born. There are two pieces of evidence that back this up. First, this lady goes right after your nads, effectively rendering you sterile and unable to spread the dark force's corruption. And then there's this house. The man here is dead. But why is he dead? The answer is over here. What if the thing on the other side of this door is his child? What if the townsfolk are not always able to get to a child before it becomes dangerous? Could this man's child have turned feral and all the townsfolk could do was to lock it in a room? Did they kill the father or did the child? Or, knowing that he was tainted, did he take his own life? And do you now carry that same taint? There's a lot of questions that I can't really answer just yet, simply because there's not enough info to go on. Like, does the school scene mean that Blake is somehow connected to this town? Why is this man's house full of goobly gubbins? Where is Jessica in all this, and why is her music box important? Whose is the voice in the well?
Now the light has gone away. Savior, listen while I pray, begging thee to watch and keep, and send me quietly to sleep.
Why can't the school host a decent concert? What's up with Licky Tongue, bro? And where does Papa Joe Stool get his awesome bling? All good questions. Some better than others, admittedly, but none that have satisfying answers right now. Any theory I'll put forward on those would be pure guesswork. The last theory I'll mention concerns the structure of the demo itself. Playing through it, it felt like a very guided, contained experience to me, to the point where I'd be very surprised if it appeared in the full game, at least presented in the same way. And at the end of it, Blake is mutilated, and then killed or captured. It's unlikely that the full game would do that to you right out the gate. But what if the demo really is an accurate representation of the full game? What if the events of the demo are canon? What if Blake doesn't make it 20 minutes before getting crackerjacked and captured? He wouldn't be in a position to do much of anything after that. But what if he wasn't the main character? He wasn't the only one in that crash. What if in the full game we play as Lynn? The game is rife with themes of impregnation, childbirth, and children. And Lynn is much more in a position to be profoundly and directly affected by the things that are going on in this town than Blake is. What if you play as Lynn, and at some point in the game you end up with a demon baby inside you? And then you have to run around trying to find out what's going on, trying to find your husband, trying to protect your demon baby from the townsfolk, trying to protect yourself from the demon baby. That sounds like a far more horrifying experience. But that's something we'll find out when Outlast 2 is released next year. Until then, I hope you enjoyed the demo, and I hope that you found my breakdown and conjecture on it interesting. If you did, the like button is just below, and if you really liked it, and would be interested in similar things in the future, the subscribe button's not far either. Outlast 2 looks like it's going to be an absolutely awful experience for everyone involved, and I for one can't wait. So, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.